Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Lighthouse Podcast. Today, I got my good friend and fellow black belt. I'm a brown belt, by the way. Black belt fellow practitioner Hunter Gambino here. He is from Jiu Jitsu League, and thank you for driving out today. I'll start by letting you say hello to everybody.
Of course.
And
Thanks
then,
for having me.
of course, and kind of telling everyone a little bit about how we met. So, back in the day, I think this was it the 2021 or was it the 20?
Yeah.
So we were at a place called Money on the Mat, which was a tournament run by Jeff Glover. It was kind of like an underground thing going on during COVID, and our friend mutually Sam competed there, and that's where we officially met. Were you competing too?
I was in that one. Yeah.
Really? I didn't even know. See, this is why we're doing this.
I was the guy that got choked unconscious in the first round.
Really? I didn't see that. Dang.
Yeah.
Was I warming up? I must have been warming up on the on the other side where they were doing like where the little like stripper pole was. Yeah. Okay. So,
I guess stripper pole and the motorcycle.
Yes.
I remember that place well.
Wow, that was good stuff. They made good tacos the second time. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Good stuff, Jeff. Good stuff. Well,
let's bring those back.
Right?
Yeah.
Those were fun. So I guess that's what we're starting off with. Let's talk a little bit about that. How was that for you? How was that tournament?
It was good to actually compete and feel that, and the lead up to it felt good just to have something to train for, because this was in I think it was October 2020, so it was like mid COVID, right when it was starting to get like really locked down. All the gyms were closed, and I had moved into a new place in Long Beach, and it had a big garage. And at the time, but it was a wide garage, but it was real low. So like my truck or my van like did not fit in there. So it's like, sick, let's just map this thing and start training. And I think that was in like June or July.
Okay.
And everyone already was going crazy, like not being able to train and whatever. So we got some mats and started inviting people to come train. We had like a real small like clique of people.
Cool.
Clique is the wrong word. Like we weren't keeping people out from training. Because I know a lot of
the select few who were down to train through the COVID.
Yeah, because you had like a bunch of different. You had like pods of people that they were training but didn't want anyone else involved.
Yes.
And then there were people that were too afraid to train at all. And then there was us that was just like, look, psychologically, we're going to do more damage to the world if we're not training, at least us.
For real.
Like,
let's
at least get a couple people together and train.
Nice.
And we had like a small group training for a couple months. And then that, Jeff started advertising these tournaments. So I was down. I hit up Sam because he wasn't training at the time really, and we hadn't trained together that much leading up to COVID. So I called him and he was like, yeah, we actually, trying to look for a spot to train. And that's how me and Sam really got close, because we would just beat the shit out of each other in the garage like every day.
That's nice.
And there was a couple of other folks like our size that were really getting after it. So kind of longer prelude into the Money on the Mat thing. So that kind of helped to get us more focused, because before then we were really just going for it.
Yeah.
Not really
just training to train kind of deal.
And it was just beating each other up. So we had a couple of people that would come in like shortly after that they were seeing what was going on. They're like, well, why don't you guys like actually try and get better instead of like tough,
instead of just rolling and
flying into the wall. Like Josh, who you met, and Horace, who unfortunately passed away last year. He would like say, well, this is actually how you do De La Riva. And I was like, guess I've been doing that wrong for 5 years.
So he was kind of like fine tuning.
Yeah, exactly. Nice. And he was like one of those guys that was really high level technically and theoretically. So he kind of adjusted the trajectory of it.
That's cool.
We were calling the garage the sweat lodge, because it was like
in a garage.
Yeah, in a garage, and it was like if it was 100 degrees outside, it was easy 120 in there.
Yep.
So that was
easy cuts, easy weight cuts for attorney.
It made weight cuts really easy. But yeah, a lot of shit went down in that garage for a couple of years. And yeah, so leading up to the money on the mat thing, that was a long
Hey, I'm all for it. I
detour.
like that. Yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, but that was a really good time because like I needed it personally.
Yeah.
So selfishly, I was setting it up for myself, and then over time, it started to be like, oh, I'm realizing now that like a lot of other people needed it too,
Providing a
and
space for them.
yeah, so there'd be so many days where because I was running a business at the time, still am,
Yeah.
but during COVID, where there's all these loopholes and laws and everything you got to work, and I was just trying to keep the place open.
Yeah.
So like I get home from work in 12 plus hours, 7 days a week, and the last thing I wanted to do was train at like 7 at night.
Yeah.
But I had 5 people coming.
Yeah.
They were.
So it keeps you accountable because you're providing the space for them as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was definitely a learning experience that I had to like keep myself in check and realize that this is bigger than us,
Yes.
than me. So we just kept training, and some days I would just be like a bag of shit on the side of the mat, like I was so just slumped over, chilling.
Yeah.
But like even those days, I would get something out of the session, and that really helped me to. I think it set me up well for the next couple of years. It's like, okay, guys are coming over, and we're either going to spar really hard, or I'm going to come up with something for us to drill,
to work on. And even just watching people roll is like studying. You get to see different reactions.
Exactly, and like it wasn't known at the time, but Sam, who has gone on to compete at really high levels in all the major tournaments, it's helped me to understand like what you need to do in preparation for competition, preparing your body, your mind, strategy,
game.
Yeah, your game, understanding someone else's game so that you could be there as a coach for them too.
Yep.
So it's like right when I see him about to go into his normal routine, I can see, okay, this elbow is flaring out a bit. Like, don't want to get caught in that armbar or whatever. There's a million iterations, but it helps to keep my mind. It helped a lot to keep my mind and set me up for the next couple of years of learning for myself and going into a bit of a teaching role at the gym or once we stopped training at the garage. We still had plenty of sessions while the gym opened back up, but one of the things that I was not wanting is because there was a lot of people that were hesitant to go back to the gym, but as a business, like the Jiu Jitsu League was and is a second home for a lot of us, and like we need to support that.
Yes.
So I didn't want to take people away, because if they had the opportunity to train 2 or 3 days a week and they were opting to do that in my garage versus at the gym, like then it's kind of like cannibalizing the family itself. So
totally understand that.
I was pretty adamant about getting back into the gym, just to support and whatnot. And now, still from what I hear, it's not back to pre-COVID numbers.
But there's a lot of people.
So it doesn't make it, any easier, to keep a business over post-COVID.
Especially being technically a luxury business, even though I don't consider it a luxury, I consider it necessary for a lot of people's mental well-being. However, objectively, in a lot of people's minds, they consider it just, like a luxury thing. Yeah. So it's good of you to support them in that,
Yeah, and I've trained at gyms in the past, other gyms that I'm less likely to go to and want to spend my time at it, like when I'm not feeling so great mentally. Like it's just a great environment for everyone to be and explore a difficult thing.
Yeah.
And that's a true expression of yourself. Like you want to set up a place that people are comfortable enough to be expressive of themselves, but pushes enough to want to get better and like explore those little like pockets of yourself that are less comfortable to be in, but where you see the most growth.
It's true.
So it's kind of like a sweet spot for me.
Yeah, no, it's awesome there. I absolutely think it's a great training room, and it's cool that like I met you there too. Again, technically recently, again in October, funny enough, because remember Money on the Mat in 2020 was in October.
Yeah.
And then Sam brought me over to Jiu Jitsu League in October again. And that's when we started kicking it again. So
yeah, sweet.
So when you did Money on the Mat, were you more of a coach, a competitor, or both in that tournament? Because it's hard when you do both.
Yeah, I would say a competitor. I wasn't
coaching. Yeah, you were more just like friends competing and
right.
stuff. So
yeah, we were just kind of the squad together, and it was loud as shit in there. There was a lot going on, and
I remember.
Yeah, so definitely it was hard enough to focus on myself. I wasn't prepared at that point, I think.
It reminded me of like, have you seen Indiana Jones, that scene where they're like arm wrestling and they're like just people smoking cigarettes and they're like hitting that's literally how it felt to me. Like it was like jiu-jitsu instead of arm wrestling. It's good stuff.
So I remember that in the tavern up on the mountain when they're doing the shots.
Yep. Good stuff.
I love Indiana Jones.
Good stuff. So let's get into more about what started. We kind of jumped ahead there because we were already both training, but like what got you into doing jiu-jitsu in the first place?
So first introduction to it, I was working at a golf course when I was like 15 or 16. And then in Long Island, where I'm from, like not far from where I grew up. And there were these guys from the local community, Far Rockaway and Inwood. And like this was like the Forrest Griffin era of the UFC. So like the guys, like a fight would be on Saturday and we'd all be working on Sunday. They'd be talking about the fights and talking about this move or that move. And like where I worked was like basically a locker room for all the golf bags. So the members would come up and pull their bag out or set up golf carts for them to go out. And in the back, we had like, didn't even have mats. It was like a concrete floor with like towels on, and we would like try shit on each other.
On concrete.
Yeah, on the concrete, slamming into stuff. And,
good stuff.
Yeah, that was a good time. But that was my first like exposure to it. And then I would just on the weekends watch fights with those guys. And then I went to Boston College when after I graduated high school, and I was still watching fights and whatnot, playing sports. And in the off season, I was kind of wanting to do something else. I think it was like my junior going into my senior year. So a couple of years had passed, but I hadn't really like trained anything.
Yeah.
I had enough, I think. And then I started, I think it was 2012 or something like that. And like Kenny Florian was fighting it, and I was like, oh man, I really like this guy. Like not super athletic, but super technical, and he was like beating like the wild guys just technically. It's like, man, I really like that guy. So I looked him up and found out that not only did he go to Boston College, where I was at the time, but him and his brother had a gym right down the street from where I was sitting when I read that to the gym was like 1.3 miles. So I was like, all right, going tomorrow.
Let's go, yeah.
So I did like my first class. They had Muay Thai there. So I was like doing Muay Thai and Jiu Jitsu, and then kind of, was kind of trending more towards the Muay Thai just because it was a little more explosive and
it's fun
to smash pads and stuff like that. So and then I started like sticking around for the MMA classes. And I saw all the Muay Thai guys were getting jacked up by the Jiu Jitsu guys. So I was like, okay, I guess I got to do that now. And then this was all in the off season of like playing rugby and doing other stuff in college. And I just felt like the skill set of Jiu Jitsu translated really well. So I was doing like Jiu Jitsu and wrestling and stuff like that over there. And then I just fell in love with it. And I just never really stopped.
Yeah. And so you've been training now for what, like 12 years?
Yeah. Yeah, 11 years or 12 years.
Nice. That's awesome. And you recently got your black belt, right?
I did.
Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
a huge accomplishment, especially considering that you have a full-time job and everything. And you still, because most people, it's like they dedicate, and they die. And so the fact that you stay consistent through all of that is really cool.
Yeah, like we kind of touched on earlier, it's like a psychological thing almost for me, because if I'm not training consistently, like I feel it mentally more so than anything else. Like it's just a really good way to keep everything else in check. It regulates life for me.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it feeds your fight or flight response as a human, which in today's society, when you think about it, like we're kind of lacking in terms of like we don't really have to like fight often. And so it's kind of nice to feed it. And I think it then prevents it, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So that's kind of something I was thinking about. I was like, why is it so good? Why do I feel when I train regularly, like I don't get so upset about things? Like things just don't bother me as much. It's like, oh, because I fed it.
Yeah. And I've kind of figured out that when life or something at work or whatever, it's never quite as bad as when someone's trying to strangle you.
So, it's especially when they're a lot bigger than you.
Yeah. So you can fight off a choke like till the very end and somehow slip out. It makes you realize that situation at work, no matter how grim it might look, there's usually a way out one way or another. And it's just how much do you want to fight it? How much do you want to roll with it?
It's true. Go against it, go around it.
Mm-hmm. So how much can you take?
Yeah.
Too. You might think you've gotten to your normal breaking point, but realize that like peeking over the edge, like, oh, I can do this as long as you want, baby. Like, you want to try and tap me with pressure? Like I could take it.
You have to break it. Well, I mean, it's good because it is true. I feel like it gets you ready for the pressure of life. Like you
absolutely.
Said, like I can tell out and about when someone has never been under literal pressure because they're freaking out because something's taking too long in line or their Starbucks Frappuccino didn't have the right amount of shots in it.
Right. Well, that could be a serious problem. You're like low on caffeine.
They're like, listen here.
Yeah, you're just getting closer to that last straw.
Get it. So I saw you brought some oranges today.
Oh yeah.
Is that like for us to eat, or are you going to show them? Because I was like, either way.
No, they're a gift for you.
Oh my god!
So
I'm so excited. By the way, he grows oranges, and I'm so excited because I love pomegranates.
Yeah. I also brought my caffeine.
I know. I have water because I definitely have not been hydrating as much as I should be, considering how much I'm running around. So, a little hydration break there. So, what do you feel like? We'll touch a little more on like that since we've both been training a while. How do you feel like jiu-jitsu has transformed you as a person over a decade?
Yeah, I kind of see it like running in parallel to the belts. Like I've never really been one to like put much stock into like what belt you are at the time, but I feel like it like when I reflect back on it, I see my life where I was at in stages of like what belt that I was and vice versa. So it's like, oh, it's hard to think that now, like if you say like, oh, I was a white belt in life then, which definitely makes sense. It's really hard to say that I'm a black belt in life now because like, but
even like, black belts still are always learning, right?
Yeah, so. Always learning. It's kind of like the new reset to where you're at. Like now you realize how little you actually know, and then you're like, okay,
right
now I can like reset. So I think I've been tapped more in the last couple of months since I've been a black belt than like in many years before that. And then I think part of it is knowing that like I don't want my jaw to feel like shit tomorrow, so I'm just gonna tap.
Well, yeah, you're at that point. You're like, I'm there. I don't need to let it go so far. Okay, you got it.
I fucked up already.
Yeah. So. Okay, we're there. I agree because I've made that mistake. I'm still making that mistake. That's why where I am, and you are.
Yeah. Well, you still have to work the ego down more and more.
Yeah.
And I feel like the more skilled you become in jiu-jitsu, like you almost have to work with your ego more.
Yeah.
Because I feel like when I it's not a bell curve, it's some kind of graph. If you look at where you start at in jiu-jitsu and where your ego is, it kind of like goes through this crazy roller coaster. Because like,
assuming it would be like some kind of
you would think that like it would just help the more you train, but sometimes it doesn't. Like you feel really good, and then all of a sudden you have a bad day at the gym, and your ego is just crushed. Right. So like when I first started, I was just relying purely on like athleticism and learned one move. Like I think I learned a triangle, by the way, and then for 5 years, that's all I did was
triangle everybody.
So yeah, I could just triangle everyone and work, and then you'd run into people that like you couldn't triangle, and like it would ruin your day. So I felt like as time went on, I like had enough ego hits to realize like, okay, this is not sustainable. So let's like actually try and learn. So I ended up moving from the East Coast to Utah, and I lived in Utah for a couple of years and trained under Mike Diaz.
Okay.
Who was one of the first rounds of black belts from Pedro Sauer.
Okay.
Got to train with Pedro a bunch when he'd come into town. So it was really great group of guys in Salt Lake, Park City area.
High altitude too.
Yeah, high altitude. So that was tough. So I couldn't rely so much on my athleticism out there in like my first couple of weeks of training because I was really acclimating, and had a group of higher belts that were all like in the 190 to 2 something range, but they were all not just big and athletic, but really good too. So, and it was like 4 of us because it was a real small town. It was jiu-jitsu wasn't really that popular yet. Now there's gyms everywhere up there, but I was just getting worked every day. Like sit in the car on the drive home, like crying, like what am I'm paying?
Why
I'm paying for this?
suck. Why am I doing this?
Yeah. So that it was not sustainable to train the way that I was training. And Mike, who he's not that much bigger than me, maybe 20, 25 pounds heavier. I learned he worked a lot with me and was kind of like the my father figure in jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
That helped me to just like, okay, you're not going to beat these guys in strength or athleticism. They're just too big, they're too good. You're just going to need to find your little niche to exploit their weaknesses, find out what your body is capable of and what your strengths are. So he worked a lot with me on that, and not known as the nicest guy. So he was kind of tough on all of us, but like exactly what I needed at the time. Not to say that he's not nice. He's a great guy and like so much wisdom.
It's like tough love kind of.
Yeah, that's more of what I mean.
Yeah.
And if during those days like Mike didn't think it was cool, like I wasn't doing it.
It was like that, like Hensel Gracie, like with that bullshit move, get out of here. Yeah.
So instead of like just doing triangles, now I was doing like butterfly guard. Okay. Like strictly and straight arm locks and stuff, which I still use a lot.
Yeah, I really like that. From butterfly.
Butterfly guard,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So now I had another couple of tools in the bag, and I felt like I was dealing with life things better. But I just feel like from my upbringing, being exposed to a lot of stuff from an early age, like my dad was super into surfing and snowboarding and skateboarding and stuff, and would drag us up the mountain, put us on skis when we were little kids, and have to deal with us learning. And I just remember him being on like the T-bar, and he had like me and my brother, like one in each arms, just dragging us up the mountain while he's trying to like balance on the T-bar.
That's so hard. How?
Yeah, but like putting the time in to like show us something that he loves to do. And now like we do it, all together.
Yep. That's so cool. It's like a family affair. Like
for sure. And I just feel like super lucky for that. And my mom, always trying to cultivate like learning more creative things and being open to stuff. And I just feel like from that, I was much more accepting of like what jujitsu had to give to me at the time. And like when it came into my life, like I feel like a couple months later or a couple months earlier, like maybe I wouldn't have been in the right spot to like really fall in love with it, because like I look, thinking back on it now, like I really needed something real in my life at that time. And yeah, it's just become, if not the most, like one of the most important things in my life, for
And
sure.
and how many days a week would you say you train now, even though you still manage a business and everything? You're still training like at least what, 5 days, 6 days?
Yeah, 4 to 6.
Yep. Yep. And you still have your little garage set up. I've been there, obviously.
Yeah.
I've been there. And do you still like just mainly like on off days, really, or just to do some like quick workshop kind of stuff in there? So
Yeah, if it's one or two people or just me and someone else, and now I use it more for just like lifting and stuff like that. Just try and spend time there, because if it's just like going to the gym, like once you get there and you're in there and like you start to do the work or you get into it, you warm your body up and like, oh, I've just been procrastinating here for the last like couple of days. Now that I'm here, I'm good. Let's go.
let's do it. Yeah.
So it's just like creating spaces like an academy or the garage where you're just like, you get in there and like you're in a mode.
Yeah.
And
just go mode, because you're in the space, you see it.
And I think that's a really special thing about spaces like academies. And you never know what you're going to get on a given day, but you go into a gym and there's certain people around that you've formed like a connection with.
Yes.
I think a lot of it has to do with like the transfer of energy between like physical touch. Like I
Oh,
don't
absolutely.
think we have enough of that, like let alone in like our, say, family life or love life or just your friends. You think other than like childhood friends and family, the closest bond you can cultivate with someone is through something like jiu-jitsu or wrestling or fighting.
It's true. It's
Because
absolutely true.
there are some people that I've only known them a couple of years, but I feel like I've known them my whole life.
When you're trusting your life in their hands, technically speaking.
Yeah.
Right? Like technically speaking, when we're choking one another, we're trusting each other to stop when I tap.
Yeah.
And so if you stopped when I tap, then now we have like I respect, we respect each other, and it's like a kind of nice deeper bond than really I think that only like a military would form, really, for similar reasons of trusting one another with each other's lives kind of deal. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I forgot where I was going with that.
So sorry. Yeah, I was like, ADHD. Yeah, I do that sometimes. I'm like, that's me. That's me. But we were talking about how jiu-jitsu has kind of matured you over the years, and you're now saying that you feel like the fact that we lack touch and connection, you cultivate that in jiu-jitsu, and that it kind of like is a good thing and what kind of keeps you going, and that at the gym you're training, it has a very good environment and good transfer of energy.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I think the sessions that you set up specifically to cultivate that go a long way. So if you have like a small group of people you've been training with for a while, it really allows you to like get into the little nooks and crannies of like not just a position, but like a feeling. Like you almost want like a specific feeling to change almost. It's a seem drastic, but like, the little nuances of a position, like, those like aha moments. Yeah. You want to like be in a place where like you're so tuned in, like not necessarily comfortable, but like the energy of the people around you and the space that you're in, to be able to really pull out those like little super minute details. Like, oh, I can feel like my knee is at 36 degrees instead of 39. Like you want to be able to tell that like
that little difference. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that too, taking it back to the whole like life thing, like that too has helped me to figure out more of life and like be more in touch with like my feelings, which I just think that I suppressed for so long that, once I started to feel more open to it, I would get like overwhelmed and flooded by stuff that it felt like it was going in the opposite direction, but it was just kind of like, when you like stop smoking weed for a couple of days and like your dreams get insane, like too much.
It's like you suddenly are like have a new level of perception.
Yeah, for sure. So then like getting that and like tapping back into like how much pressure can you take, and like I think it's like a matter of like making you be more comfortable with being super present for what you're feeling. So it's like, okay, like I might just be sad today, and that's not the end of the world, and that's okay. Like I might just be depressed today.
Yes.
And that's what your body gives you on that given day. And that makes things a lot easier to cope with and to start to understand. So just becoming like more intimately acquainted with like positions in jiu-jitsu, I feel like has kind of given it like a good contrast to life. It's like, hey, you're not just gonna get good at this thing right away. Like it's like I think a couple of years ago someone was like, yeah, you should meditate, and I was like, yeah, I should meditate. I'm gonna be the best at meditating. Like
I'm gonna get really good at that.
And like I've just found myself like even for 15 minutes just be like, why am I not good at meditating? It's
like trying to get into that like kind of fine-tuning of it.
And then what I realized is, I'm still realizing it now, it's just like, okay, to be able to like take a step back and observe what's going on, to really allow yourself to feel the things that you're feeling, because you could get really wrapped up in a lot of things, and it puts the blinders onto red flags that, I think Lucas was saying like he's just been blowing through red lights.
Just blowing through just
or red flags.
Because
And I feel like that's really helped to like open things up to me, and it has a good correlation to going back on the mat and like learning and working through things that like you might be uncomfortable with.
Yes.
So I feel like it's a good way to go back and forth, and like you're always working on yourself.
It's absolutely true.
With that sort of mentality. And it's been a rough go, but
well, because like in jiu-jitsu, like you said, you did only triangle. That would be like a good metaphor or direct correlation would be like as if an individual never changed who they were or never changed their habits, and they're just the same person for 10 years. And, it only works so far. And then you have to kind of start to expand and elevate in order to grow in life, just like jiu-jitsu, right? That's how you get better, is you expand. So it is true that as you grow in jiu-jitsu, you learn to, like you said, expand your horizons and explore other opportunities. So that's cool.
Yeah, and as you explore that, I feel like if you look at it as kind of like a shell of your potential, like when you start to realize how vast everything is, like that kind of becomes endless. And then it's much easier to then fill that space, as long as you're not like fighting the urge to stay comfy and small, and like this is everything that I can control, and that's all that I'm gonna like want to touch and be resistant to everything else. It allows you to take in, okay, I'm feeling uncomfortable because of what? Okay, let's explore that, because now that I know that I'm okay with, like, I'm feeling some sort of anxiety or sadness or happiness, like now that I'm not necessarily saying like just because I'm happy today doesn't mean that I'm happy. That sounds bad. Like, but if you were to say like I might be feeling depressed today, it doesn't necessarily mean that I am, like, my being is depressed, So it's like, as long as you know that that's like a feeling and it's transient, and that, if you look at those feelings are necessarily, they could necessarily be outside of you.
Yes.
And that means that it doesn't mean that it's any less significant, but it allows you to work with it more.
Yes, it's so true.
Okay, well, why am I depressed? Why am I feeling anxious? And is there something within that I can control on a daily basis that can make me not feel so depressed, or at least become acquainted with it and know like, hey, you're doing that thing again.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily something you did right now, but it's been the last 3 days you've been off your routine. or you haven't been like treating you and yourself or your loved ones or people the way that you know that you can be there for them in your community.
Yes.
You can like correct that shit versus it, because momentum's a motherfucker. Sorry if
no, it's fine. We cuss all the time. It's all good.
yeah, because you can like go off the rails and it gets stuck in places for a long time. And
oh yeah,
have a lot of empathy for people that you run into the street and you don't know why, but you're just like, there's a lot of energy coming off this person. They're angry and
they got some darkness going on.
Yeah, you don't know what they went through. So I think all of that, like becoming acquainted with that in jiu-jitsu and in life, like has helped to be a little lighter.
Like a kind of more calm, understanding person is what I've noticed, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the midst of chaos, even sometimes.
Absolutely.
Because you're more understanding than, oh my God, why is that like person acting that way? You're just more like, oh, probably sustained some intense pressure.
Yeah. Or maybe they only trained 3 times this week. Back to your original question. I notice a big difference when I'm training 2 or 3 times a week than when I'm training like 6 days a week.
In terms of your reactions to life, or in terms of your emotions, or in terms of everything?
Yeah, I feel like the trigger is just a little shorter, and something I'm exploring now. It's like, how do I, if life gets in the way and I can't train for a week, how do I make sure that I keep myself in a certain place mentally that like I'm still going to be okay. I'm still going to be the best member of the community that I can be. I'm going to be there for people. I'm going to be there for myself. That sort of thing.
Yes, that part is something that I've been exploring with not only myself, but with my students, because I have noticed, like, if you get an injury or someone has a baby or something, you have to take off time, and then they're irritable or, sad or, whatever they may be feeling. And I was wondering about that. Like, how do we as practitioners feed the fight or flight? Would watching help? I've something I've been trying to kind of like figure out. And that's definitely something that maybe over time we could talk about and figure out, through like asking teammates and stuff, like, what do you do when you're off? How do you, kind of figure, because that is something that I've definitely been curious as to explore, because I've noticed the same thing. If I am unable to train in the capacity I normally train, which was normally 6 to 7 days a week, plus lifting, plus trail running. If I was just lifting and trail running even, it was not the same as doing. Also, I could do just jiu-jitsu and not lift and trail run, and it still kept me more at bay. It's very interesting, and I'm like, what is it about it? Is it the adrenaline from the biological threat? What do you think it is?
Yeah, I think it's the difficulty, like knowing that I'm not leaving this room until I do 100 pull-ups is like different, and that bar isn't like coming after you.
Yes.
You can walk away, you can walk past it a million times, you can stop, you can not get your goal, and like that will eat away at you. At least it does for me. But like the fact that like a round starts and you might be in some shit in a minute, but you got 4 minutes still that you got to deal with something.
That was me today.
Yeah, and like there's not really a way out. I mean, you could tap for sure, but I think there's something. It's like there's something coming after you, and it's like you need to formulate a plan quick, like right now, and that gets more of like the innate human genes, and I feel like everything is firing there. Versus like lifting is great. Like you get sick pump, you feel really good after, before, you feel that. But there's something different about like possibly losing, getting injured. Like there's the ego thing involved in that. And there's not a lot of excuses. Like, I mean, people make excuses in jiu-jitsu all the time, but like you and I both know that like we slap hands and like you could never have met this person, male, female, small, big, whatever. you grab a hold of someone, you're like, right away.
Oh yeah.
What's up?
Oh yes.
Yeah. So, like, you know what time it is.
How? Yeah, depending. Yeah, that's it. It's
like this kind of doughy looking, not that there's anything wrong with it, but like doughy 55-year-old dude, you grab a hold of him and you're like, this guy feels like a tree.
Yeah.
And he's trying to rip my leg off.
Literally.
So it's like, okay, I got to figure out not just a way to like win, but I need to stay safe, more importantly than anything.
Yeah. Because we're not full-time athletes. We're not full-time competitors. We don't only train. We have other jobs too.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And yeah, for sure. I think that's, there's something that awakens in us. Like, not just that we have trained and knowing, okay, how do I solve this problem? But it's happening on the fly. Like, timing, your persistence, and like when to kind of like go more defensive or offensive. And I think that awakens a lot in ourselves, in our brains. There's a release of all sorts of
because
chemicals.
You have to strategize.
Yeah. And like, there's nothing more satisfying to me than getting into that flow state. Like, you get there with sports or activities or whatever, but I feel like as you train longer and allow yourself to be more expressive, you get closer to that flow state where you're just vibing and letting your body do the thing you've trained it to do. And I think we lose that quite often in life. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Rise of Superman, the Stephen Kotler book.
No.
But that changed a lot of things for me. And it goes really into like the flow state. And I think that extra push of training, like knowing that like this is not necessarily real, but you get the closest thing to real as you'll get.
Oh yeah.
And I think that environment allows you to get into that flow state, allows you to awaken more of your being.
Yes.
And I think that's what that is. To go back to your original question, like why you get that and not so much that feeling from like lifting or running. I mean, people get runner's high all the time.
Yeah, of course. I mean, but it's still not this. I feel like, I mean, I guess I've met people who are runners, and if they run every day, like 10 miles, and if they don't run, they get kind of, so I guess, but I feel like maybe more people who do jiu-jitsu are attracted to jiu-jitsu because maybe they had something happen in their life where they weren't in control, whether it be emotionally, physically, whatever. And so maybe the people who come to jiu-jitsu have a little more loads on their hearts or in their minds, and that's why they find jiu-jitsu as like a form of coping or a tool in their coping of whatever that load may be. Mm-hmm. That's just something I've noticed as an instructor, like, and as someone who runs a gym now, and people come in and I always ask them like why. And I do feel like there was always something. There was always something. There's either an incident or just an environment or something that made them feel like they weren't in control in some way, shape, or form, and that is why they wanted to learn this art of control. Because when you think about it, jiu-jitsu is the art of controlling another human being.
Right.
When you get really good at it, which is really cool. So I guess with that, then what do you think your why is?
Yeah, I think definitely been thinking about this more often later in my time on the mat. And I think it's got kind of two pillars to it. Like, one's community, and just being a part of something that's bigger than me. Like, I get such a good vibe out of the people that I've been training with for years. And I ran into someone that I trained with like once or twice, like 10 years ago. And I saw them, like, I was in New York, and I think I saw them in like a supermarket or something. I was like, I think, yeah.
I've rolled with you once.
Yeah. Good Z-guard, right?
Yeah.
I knew I recognized you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I still walk with a limp bastard. Yeah. But yeah, I think community because you get a sense of what it means to be a part of something bigger.
Yes.
And now later in my I guess you could say career journey, like being able to give back to people feels really good, and like has given me a lot back too, a lot of good feedback. Like, okay, why do you feel that way about this position, or why do you do this and that? I'm like, you know what? Never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
So being able to distill information a little bit more so that I can be more use of, the people that are just starting out, or people that are struggling with something.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's like kind of ego-wise, just thinking like, oh, I want to be someone that someone wants to roll with.
Yeah.
And like when I'm not there, they're like, oh, I wish Hunter was here. Selfishly, for my own like ego, but like I want to be able to be that person for many people, because I have those people.
Yes.
You have those people. Everyone has those people that you're like, oh, I wish so and so was here.
Yes, absolutely.
Like that community aspect, that you're building something with a group of people, is also something that I think we lose in modern society. Like,
yeah.
Some people are really lucky that they've always grown up with that, or they have that. Some people don't. So I think that's a major pillar of it for me. And then the other thing is just like my personal growth. It's just been the best vessel for personal growth that I've come across in a life of like exploring different difficult things, whether it be like mountaineering or backcountry skiing.
You said rugby.
Rugby.
That's definitely not an easy sport.
Big surfing, big waves, free diving. I get obsessed with things that like try and kill me. So it's been the best vessel for that personal growth for me.
That makes sense.
For sure, because there's that highest level of honesty that you can achieve, that when you start rolling with someone, they got you. You make up all the excuses in the world you want. Like, oh, I was feeling off today. I had to do this. I had to do that. They're on steroids. Whatever you want. They got you.
That's it. That day. Yeah.
It's like, how are you going to take it, and how are you going to learn from it? And like, over time, I probably made more excuses than anyone else, but now there's no room for excuse for me anymore, because I have learned over the years that that's like my best way of survival isn't making excuses and protecting against it. It is accepting whatever.
Like breeds accountability.
Yeah. And like I was running from that for so long, I think. And so community and just a vessel for honesty and personal growth.
And now, as like you're black belt, now you're helping with coaching at the gym. Do you see yourself doing more coaching, more competing for yourself? Because I feel like it's very hard to balance being a competitor and being a competition coach. For myself personally, I have a hard time balancing it, but I've seen plenty of people like Boogie does it easily. So for yourself, what do you see yourself doing with your jiu-jitsu now?
I definitely want to compete. It's just not something I've been super motivated to do lately. I think that might be a good sign that I should just do it.
Yeah.
Because I think like that extra bit of like getting outside my comfort zone will be really important. But I'm coming off of a long enough period of saying like I'm gonna make jiu-jitsu as fun as possible for me, and I've just been flowing and connecting like movement patterns over the last couple of years, and like they're starting to solidify themselves.
Yes.
Which is cool. Which some people are probably gonna hear that and think like, what does that even mean? But I'm like,
but other people will understand what it means. Like,
so just letting jiu-jitsu be like an expression of myself. Yes. Instead of like, I'm going to go in and do this. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, let's do that, but let's find 1,000 ways to get there. And now I've started to allow my mind to catch up to my body.
Yes.
Which is like in jiu-jitsu, I feel like it's the opposite way for so long. And like as like a purple belt, I had a bigger bag of tools than I did earlier, but I was also just like wanting to win all the time, and that was holding me back from it being more of an expression of myself. It's not that I fell out of love with it, but I was like, I want to be in love with jiu-jitsu again. So I went through and I broke my foot too, so that helped.
Did you break it not in jiu-jitsu?
I broke it in jiu-jitsu.
Oh dang, was it toe hold?
Yeah, toe hold, yeah. I was defending the way I thought I was supposed to defend, and then my foot just broke.
Were they going like over the was it like and
yeah.
So then yeah,
so like my leg was straight and we were like rolling out of bounds, and I was like every time we came up, like I was trying to use my free leg to kick, and then at one point the guy kind of just, it was in a competition. Yikes. And he like landed on both my legs at the same time and just cranked out and broke my foot. Ooh. But being super active at that time, and then like going through a couple months, several week recovery time of kind of just like, you have to be off your foot, and I was like, what am I going to do? And then when I came back, I tried to approach it with like, okay, what do I have available to me? And let's play in that space. And then that space grew until it was like, okay, I could walk, I could do a backflip, I could do everything that I would want to be doing. I can, go snowboarding. And I did. And I was like, okay, let me just like continue that mentality. Like, what does my body have for me today? And like, where's that boundary? And how do I like take some steps past that boundary until like, I think through that process, I was learning that my mind was my hindrance, not my body. So I went through this kind of re-evaluation of what I was doing in jiu-jitsu, and kind of just said like, train long enough, I know how to get out of stuff. I can, do whatever to win a fight, but let's like make this more of like an expression of me. I do, new stuff, maybe stuff people haven't seen before, stuff that I definitely haven't seen before. Like, let's explore things and be open to what the way that people are moving, and mechanically, like how are people doing the things that they're doing. And like, that's when it started to reel me back in.
Yes.
And like talking to you about like physio type stuff, like has helped me realize like, oh, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So like biomechanically, like that's what kind of like pulled me back into like the strategy, and like, okay, now let's use these movement patterns that like, now let me set up like really good sound jiu-jitsu to work with positions to then allow my body to do whatever it wants.
Yes.
And know that it's going to end up in the right spot.
That's it.
Yeah. So like, I think it's time for me to now start to take that and like what I've cultivated and put that into a competition setting.
Yeah. I think you do great.
So that's definitely of interest, is to be competing, not just like a one-off or something.
Like semi-regularly or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And like get comfortable with the process, so that it's not just like, gotta compete this weekend. Like
have it be like something you want, like, what I get to compete. Like, I get to compete this weekend.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like excited. Well, I find that when you're doing, even if you're competing once every 4 months, for example, you generally will eat better, hydrate more. You'll take better care of yourself, because you're like, I know I'm gonna have to make weight. I don't want to feel like crap. Like, that guy might be on the bomba, right, depending on what we're competing in, so on and so forth. And you just want to be prepared for it. And I've also found that I personally, for myself, get injured more when I'm not on a good lifting regimen and like not eating well. And so like, if you want to compete, you have to like do all that as well, so sounds like you're on all the right tracks for that. Mm-hmm. So that's good.
Yeah, I agree that just having that thing to like help you make that decision, because I'm indulgent like motherfucker. Like, I'll eat and drink and do this and that. That will never get in the way of me training.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the guys at the gym know that, like, oh, I saw Hunter out partying on Friday. You bet your ass he's going to be in the gym on Saturday.
But you just feel the difference if you're trying
Yeah.
to compete versus like rolling for like fun and you know what I mean? 'Cause
Yeah.
it's like
and that's the thing that without competing consistently, like, that I won't just find out of nowhere. It's like, how do I know there's a competition coming up and not just be one track mind, like, okay, this is competition training every single day, and it's not fun anymore.
No, yeah, you want it to still be fun.
I don't know if it's fun to anyone really, like, unless you're particularly like sadistic, but like, I don't like training for competition. I don't feel like it cultivates like the best aspect of me. That's just me personally. But it's like, you need to know, like, okay, in the last minute, and like all of a sudden we're back on our feet. I cannot let this guy take me down
because I'm down by this many points and blah blah blah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And like that's where the competition, like training, really comes into play, and it's so needed. But it's like, how do I train and still have fun and cultivate like the most learning and the most like expression of self while knowing there's a tournament coming up?
Yes. Yeah, that's something I was doing recently. Was during my rounds, I would, in my mind, like not out loud, but in my mind, I was like racking up points. Like this round, I'm just going to focus on positions, and I'm just going to see how many points I could rack up and not let them get any hooks, no points. But they didn't know. It was my own game for me. And then I was just playing it quietly for myself, you know, or like, okay, this one, I'm going to do ADCC rule set, first 3 minutes, sub only, you know, second 3 minutes. So that's something that I personally did. And that way I wasn't like going 100%, like we're competent, but I, in my mind, was training for a tournament because I was strategizing my rounds for that. I mean, I guess that could be one way, but otherwise, if I say I'm comp training, then what ends up happening is we're like going at it, and then,
which is needed too.
Yes, you need to do both, but balancing it.
Yeah, and like you find what works for you. Like, it shouldn't be like, you shouldn't be dreading it.
Well, I wish I'm trying to figure out, I was like trying to kind of talk to Kyle about this. Is there like a ratio we could figure out where athletes can have a set amount of days of hard training and then another day of strategic training and then a couple of days of just flowing, so that they're not having to take steroids? Because, you know, the reason most people take steroids is for injuries.
Yeah, recover and be able to train every day.
Yeah, because they're training like 2 to 3 times a day. It's not because they're trying to get bulk in jiu-jitsu. Most of the time it's for injuries. So like, is there a way that we could create it so that we could train for comp but be healthy stuff?
Yeah, and then do steroids for fun.
Just for fun, and then get yoked. Yeah, so I mean, that's something I'm trying to kind of figure out too, because like, I'm not going to be probably competing for myself for a little bit just due to injuries, but like for my students, you know, because like some people, they'll just like me. I'm one of these people that I'm talking about that trains through injuries, and then it just gets worse. So then it's like, and obviously when you're a competitor, you do get injured. So then it's like trying to find that balance, right? So
yeah, and I think learning like what your body is capable of and like the signs, like you learn over time, and unfortunately, more than not, for people that have been in the game for a long time, like they figure that out too late, and they already have a knee surgery or shoulder surgery or chronic like neck pain. Like, luckily I'm real bendy, so I haven't, like, knock on wood, like haven't like had to deal with that much. But like I had a like a bad wrist injury when I was a blue belt and I was still living in Utah. Like, I hurt my wrist snowboarding, and at the time, this was like when I was starting to like learn how to do stuff other than a triangle. So I was doing like all like lapel chokes, like get to the back and do lapel chokes or bow and arrows or whatever. And now with the wrist, I could not finish a lapel choke.
Oh yeah,
I just could not do it. Even like bow and arrow on the other side, where I would grip the pant leg, I could not use that wrist with any flexion.
Ooh.
So I was like, well, now what am I gonna do? You know, like I can't I suck at triangles now because I stopped doing them, and now I can't do lapel chokes. Like, what am I gonna do? Okay, like Mike was like, you got to do arm bars. Like, lapel chokes in those positions are only one defensive movement away from an arm bar anyway.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, arm bars became my bread and butter for the next like year. And then when I started being able to use my wrist like effectively again, like then the chokes and the arm bars started to feed right into each other, and all of a sudden I had this like infinitely more complex game. That's funny to say because it was like now there was two moves, but it's like it went from one move to two
chain it
with a million iterations of it to chain it. And that's when I really started to realize, like, okay, an injury may not be like keeping you completely out of training, unless it's like your back and you can't move, or your neck or something.
Yeah, neck and back.
You have training partners that you trust, and you have the self-control to not go like fucking crazy.
Yes.
You can really utilize injuries to your benefit.
Yeah, because it makes you develop a whole new way of movement that you can now implement once the injury goes away.
Yeah, and like you learn to work around stuff, and it's playing with fire, because like sometimes you get carried away, and like all of a sudden you retweak an injury that like you were trying to protect.
I've done that quite a few times.
quite a few times. Yeah.
I think I just did that the other day. I was like, so.
It's something that you learn as you go.
Yeah.
I had another thought that just disappeared.
I apologize. It's probably me. It's contagious because my thoughts do that constantly. They're just like mist. They come, they go. I'm like, sorry, I'm probably rubbed off. So you also do stuff with like herbs and stuff, like where, like, cause I remember we kind of talked about this, like you grow fruit and stuff. Do you do any kind of like herbs and vegetables and things as well? Like on the side, like this is totally random, not jujitsu stuff, but I'm just kind of like going into more personal stuff. So do you enjoy like permaculture, or is it more just for fun, or?
Yeah, got a couple of trees on the property that I moved into a couple of years ago, and have grown a bunch of herbs and vegetables over the years, and kind of taken a little bit of a hiatus. Like, you've been by the place.
Yeah.
Got a kind of a big project going on. So I'm just sticking to a few things in an area that still gets sun, that's kind of protected from the rest of the project. But just stuff that I'll use all the time, like some chamomile for tea, and yarrow for tea, and some infusing. And I like to infuse like herbs into olive oil for cooking, stuff like that.
That's cool.
Yeah, not growing any vegetables right now. Like squash would do fine right now. I just don't have the space to.
Well, because you're doing all the landscape.
Yeah, and those can run. So yeah, a little extra space.
Yeah.
Growing like tobacco. That's
because you said you hand roll your own, like, do you roll your own cigarettes, right?
Cigarettes. It's mostly like a ceremonial thing, like to smoke with people, or at like a time and a place sort of thing. And
makes sense.
Offerings, like bonfires, throw a little bit in there.
Yeah.
They're also really good companion plants, because the oils on the leaves they're a natural insecticide.
Oh.
So you can distill oils into like a spray with water and spray them on other plants. It's totally natural, and it'll keep plant bugs away from eating your fruit and stuff.
That's nice.
So like this past summer, like growing tobacco next to, say, tomato.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, like to keep the
bugs, all different types of bugs and funguses and stuff like that. The mites, the caterpillars and slugs.
They like the spicy stuff. You tried the spicy thing and they still ate it.
Yeah. Yeah. So putting like a tobacco plant next to the tomato and like hitting it with some of the spray, that goes a long way.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then fun fact, everybody, he also brews his own beer. That's really cool. What got you into that?
So I was with a significant other at the time, and we were out in the desert and had some substances involved, and I was coming back to this dimension, and I was like, man, I'd love to have a beer, something familiar, kind of consummate the journey that I had just gone on. And I grabbed a beer from the cooler, like we were camping, and I'm looking at this beer, perfectly good beer, tasted great, and I was like, I have no connection to this thing. Like, I don't know who made it. This is essentially a sacrament to, people have been consuming alcoholic beverages and brewing, alcohol for,
a very long time.
Yeah, as long as we know people were around. They were making some sort of concoction, and I was like, this would be a time to have something like that and use it like more as like a sacrament, other than just like pounding beers.
Yes.
Like, use it for what you want, but in that moment, in that headspace,
that was your mind.
That was my mindset. I was like, I should have something sacred in my hand to commemorate this moment.
Yes.
And I was like, should be making beer. And then
go with it.
Yeah, my girlfriend at the time had the wherewithal to remember that. She was in the same mind state as I was.
She's like,
and for her to remember that, and like, we were right around Christmas time, she got me like a beer brewing kit.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah, so, and I was like, oh shit, let's go. I started, making batches, and you learn just like you do doing anything. Like, you learn, mistakes, and you go as hard with this as you want.
Yeah.
Like, you can get real dirty with the temperatures and measurements and all that sort of stuff. Like, because yeast is a crazy organism. So it doesn't take much to throw it off or make it the best thing you've ever had.
You have to control it delicately, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and like, let it run wild and just see, because it's like, what's the worst thing? Oh, you have a bad batch of beer, Yeah. Sometimes, like, the best, like, I'm not going to temperature control the whole house to make sure that this thing stays what it is. And sometimes we'll get a heat wave in the middle of a beer that really likes low temperatures, and then it goes crazy at a certain time during the fermentation, and then you get it after it's done, fermenting and aging, whatever specs you want, and then you have a sip of it, and you're like, ooh, that's not so great.
Yeah.
And then you wait another 2 weeks, and you're like, whoa, that's really good.
Okay.
So it's like really interesting, because like, I would take notes and see like what reactions, what things happen.
Like whether to age it or drink it right away, and
or like, what temperature was it at, like, by like every 6 hours, like how much did the temperature fluctuate,
and then like, how did that cause it to react?
Did it give off flavors? Does it smell more sulfury at high temperatures or less? So just like watching it and just kind of existing with it, and knowing that it's going to be on its own journey, like, and you can control what you want.
I like that. Like that, because that's the one I tried was really, really good. The Belgian you made, I was like, this is good. This is like legit. So you obviously know what you're doing.
Over time and making enough mistakes, you can learn to do anything.
But like, I know it's so random, like circling back, but I feel like that's what's cool about jiu-jitsu, is it gives you that confidence to try new things like that. Like, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna try it. Why not? Like, what's the worst that can happen? I'll tap out, start again, right?
Yeah, it's like making a mistake, like brewing beer. It's like, well, you're not gonna like black out and poop yourself. So
it's funny, because I feel like probably someone who doesn't do jiu-jitsu would have a total meltdown if their beer batch went wrong. Think about it. They'd probably have a total meltdown. But because you're just like, it's all good.
At least I didn't shit myself.
Rodolfo Romero says, yeah, Hunter. I don't know. I don't know if you know who that is, but it may be a friend of yours who knows you. He just like commented live.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, like I just saw it right now, so that's why I was like, I want to tell you.
The homie down in Central America.
Yeah, so he was like saying hi.
Yeah, what up, Rodolfo? Hope you're doing well.
It's awesome. So Wow. I feel like we're both like, we go all over the place, and I love that. So for you, for right now, you want to maybe compete. The Open's coming up. That's kind of last minute. You're not going to do that one, right? This weekend? Or
I wasn't planning on it. Is registration still open?
I had to pull out because of my thing, but I'm curious about, I'm going to go watch, obviously, and support. I know Vinny and Sam are competing. So, and then they have another one in March in Vegas.
Oh, sweet.
So,
right on.
I don't know.
I'll have to check that out.
It'd be fun. Well, I think that we'll probably conclude this episode. But one thing I do actually have a question for you. As someone who runs your own business, you're a busy guy, right? And you make the time for jiu-jitsu. For anyone out there right now who hasn't tried it yet, they've been wanting to start, right? And maybe they're like, is it worth the time? Is it worth the dedication? What would you say to someone like that?
Yeah, it's tough to make the time. And it's a learning process. So, like, in a nutshell, like, you just got to give it time and make it a priority. That, okay, I might not, with my job or work schedule, like, it's really important for, like, my life and livelihood that, like, I get my career going, and, like, yes, it will get in the way of you training jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
But just because you can't train 5 days a week now because of your work schedule doesn't mean it will never happen.
Yes.
So you just put in the time and effort and train when you can. Sometimes you're going to feel like, I don't want to train. Like, I got too much going on. I want to go to sleep. I really want that burrito. Like, I'd really rather get a burrito right now than go train.
Yes.
It's like, okay, just know that, like, even if you hit 50% of those sessions, that's X amount more sessions you're going to get in than if you didn't.
Yep.
So, like we were talking about earlier, like, momentum's a motherfucker. Like, if you just go today, it's way more likely you'll go tomorrow. If you don't go today, it's way less likely that you'll go tomorrow.
Yes.
So it's like, you really want to just get in when you can, and knowing that, like, you need to be ready for whatever opportunity comes to you. So, like, it's not easy, that's for sure.
Yes.
But, like, train when you can and know that it can get better. Like, as long as, like, you're already, like, chomping at the bit to go train, and the second you get an opportunity, you're in there, you have that trained into you. You might not have the opportunity to train 5 days a week now, and it might not be for 5 years, but, like, you want that trained into you so that when you do have the opportunity to train every day, you can do that.
Yes.
Like, you're not standing in your own way for when that opportunity does come.
Yes. Yeah, that's great advice. And what I would maybe tag on is, if you're a person that knows I can only do 1 day a week, like, do it. Do the 1 day a week.
Don't not do it.
Yeah, just do it the 1 day a week. And yeah, you may be given a little bit of a hard time by the guys who can do the 2-a-days, 5 days a week, but you're doing heck of a lot better than all of people who are not training 1 day a week. Right. So it's, just keeping that relativity in mind and accepting it, right? Accepting that and then enjoying the journey probably be
absolutely
good things. So, well, thank you so much. This has been super fun. This was the first in person. So I hope it sounded good. I hope it looked good, everybody. Thank you guys for joining. And thank you again, Rodolfo. And I hope you guys have a good day.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And everyone, just so you know, you want to shout out your Instagram handle?
It's Hunter Gambino, all one word, _SP.
Follow him, and also check out Jiu Jitsu League, guys. It's this really great academy. Hunter is one of the black belts there. It's in Long Beach, run by Kevin and Haley Howell. Wonderful place. You get to roll with Hunter there. Highly recommend it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, everybody. Have a good one. Trying to end it. It's like freezing on me. It shows that it ended. Looks like it's being weird. So, woo! We'll see how that goes. It sounded really good on my end. So, I'm just trying to get my thing froze on me. There were 5 people, between 5 to 15 people watching at a time the whole time.
Oh, sweet.
I was surprised because I don't
know.
normally get that many live.
People watch it like after or something.
Yeah, they normally like view it after, so I'm kind of surprised. So this sweet. That was dope.
Yeah, that was fun.
I always have it like for me, it's always like I always have to keep in mind that there are some people who will like just listen and not watch too. So whenever I'm doing the podcast, I'm like keeping that in mind. So that's why sometimes I'll like ask a random question because I'm like thinking about someone driving and listening, and there's like a they're like, oh, okay, what are they making faces? You know, so I always am trying to. What are you about to have? You know, there's this lady. My kids' classes actually don't start till 4 now, and I don't think any kids are coming today. But I have this lady who's supposed to swing by. She's a 57-year-old woman who went to the women's only class at RGLA, I guess, last Sunday. And she wants to sign up and she wants to do some privates as well.
She wants to sign up here?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So I'm super stoked. And then I have my other kid, Deshaun, but he's just waiting for me to get people for him to show up to class. Because he already has a base. Like he trains with Herb Dean and Savant. So he doesn't really need like me to teach him, like, I mean, I could teach him basics, but he's just kind of like, I want to wait until there's actually people for me to drill with besides you because I'm 6 feet tall. I can't get it, to be honest. So then I got my other dude, Lewis, who trains under Boss Root, and he's like an older guy, he's like in his 50s. It's crazy. Trying to get all that all. There we go.